So this work is called First Impression from the Measuring Device for Negative Space. And so the way I did this is that I was thinking about human borders and how we interact, and also sometimes about how we as human beings have these different layers of, sometimes we feel more open and sometimes we're more protective. When I was making this piece, it started, I've always been fascinated by measuring devices of all kinds. And there's a profile gauge that is like a comb with a lot of pins on it that you press up against something and you get the profile. You sometimes use it for buildings and things. And so I basically made a human-sized profile device. And that became in its own right a sculpture that's not here, and I've decided it's not important to show that, but the process was quite important, because what I did was I had these glass rods that I pressed against my body from different levels, like starting with the feet and all going up. And the way I did it, I pressed myself against this machine. And that way I got a profile of myself. And it was only on one side, so I had to press like this and then press like that. And I made drawings of each layer. And the first thing that happened is, because I could have done a 3D scan and got a perfect image of the body, but that would not, I felt, have the same truth to it in a sense, because every day, every hour, I don't think we're always the same. Our mood changes, we have different experiences in life, and sometimes even the way people perceive us is different, not just the way we feel. So when I was pressing myself against this measuring device, sometimes I pressed a little harder and sometimes not as much. And so it became kind of an imperfect but more human imprint. And so once I had made all these drawings, I started with using the glass rods that I then heat up and to use a technique called flame working. And the reason I used glass for this is, and the reason I often use glass, is because of its fragility and the possibility of making things look layered, and you can see two sides at the same time. And you could say actually that this piece started when I was artist in residence at Corning Museum many years ago, and I was looking at blinds, the curtains where you pull and you can see, sometimes you see through and sometimes you don't. So I've been thinking about this for a long time, and also really fascinated that you can actually see not just the glass but also in between the layers through it. And the fact that this also it's so invisible. And I guess when I was making it, I did feel very fragile and almost kind of invisible. But then I realized that the shadow was stronger than the actual work. And I really liked that it became almost overpowering, and that you could play with this balance between the physicality and the shadow. So that's kind of the story behind. And then because I was interested in this layering, I then developed, so you could say this is also part of the same series. It's also called Impressions, Impression 2. And that is also dealing with this border. While here I'm taking the outskirts, there I'm looking just as, because we don't control how other people look or experience ourselves, perceive us. So there I actually made like a container, I would call it, of glass that I lay in. And then I made all these glass spheres, and they're pretty heavy. Like if you take one up, it's solid glass, so they're pretty heavy. And I set up with some assistants. I set up this container, and then I lay myself underneath all these glass spheres. And what happens is that, they're heavy, and they also focus on different areas that you have also no control over. So suddenly you'll see like this area is in focus and the other things are not. And plus all the borders become blurred. And I guess that's another example. That's why I use glass. It has this ability to distort and to reveal unexpected details. And this was kind of also commenting this, and it became had a lot of pressure on my body when I was doing it. So, and I like the fact that it looks very light, but it is very heavy. And so again, it has a very heavy undertone once you start looking and thinking about it. So I like playing with that, and I think glass is just excellent for that kind of work.